Hey, Hannah and Mike here with Delta Faucet. Today we're going to talk about installing the trim for your Delta single-handle 3-hole mount rough for a Roman tub. At this point, your rough should already be installed. If you haven't done that yet, check out our video for that.
Now today we're installing the Broderick model. This trim will only work with the R3708-PX or the R3709-PX rough. So double check to make sure that you're installing the trim on one of those two roughs.
All right, let's grab some tools that you'll need to complete this install. Some silicone sealant, adjustable wrenches, an 1/8 inch and 3/32 inch hex key, which should both be included in your packaging, a towel, and some safety glasses. Once you've gathered those tools, let's get started.
Here we are in our tub, ready to start the first step of our trim install. But before I do that, I want to re-verify that I've shut off the water supplies that go to the bathtub itself, and also that I've put something down in the bottom of the tub, like a piece of cardboard or a towel, to not only protect the tub surface, but also because we're going to be working with some small parts, and I want to make sure I don't drop anything down the drain. So to get started, I'm going to take my 3/32 of an inch hex key and loosen up and remove the set screw on the side of my test cap that's on my spout body here. Go ahead and fully remove that set screw, careful not to drop it, and then set it off to the side. Next, I'm going to remove the test cap by pulling it straight up and off of the spout body. And I find it's easiest to give it just a little bit of a twist as I'm pulling straight up and off, like so. Again, setting that off to the side. Next, I'm going to be removing this plastic diverter that's in the middle of the spout body. Now when I do this, I want to be careful to lift it straight up. And you'll notice it comes pre-greased and may have some residual water on it. I just want to make sure that I keep this clean, so I'm going to set it off to the side on a clean towel or a paper towel like I have here. Now at this point, everything's looking great. So my last step is to take another towel, do any light water cleanup if I had any drips that came out with the diverter, and then we'll be ready to move on to preparing our spout. Here I have the spout that we'll be installing today. So the first step in preparing it for installation is turning it over to look at the backside. You'll notice I have a spot for my finial and also a little hole at the top that's going to be for this little white button that comes included with your faucet. So I'm going to take that little white button, place it into the top hole, and with a little bit of pressure, it'll fit right down in there until it's seated fully. Once that's in place, I'm going to take my finial, and I want to point out on the finial itself, you'll see it has a couple holes on the backside. One is threaded. Just keep that in mind for a later step. Next, I'm going to put my finial into place, and that button should be causing a little bit of friction, making the finial move up and down nice and easy. Okay. This looks great on the back, so now I'm going to set this off to the side. And I'm going to pick up that diverter from the previous step. Now the diverter, you'll notice at the very top here, has a little threaded area for our adapter. So I'm going to take this included adapter. You'll see it has threads on both ends, and it doesn't matter which side that I install. I'm just going to thread it right into the top of the diverter like this until it's just hand tight, and should look something like this. Now that we have the adapter threaded into the top of the diverter, we're next going to be threading this into the finial. So the top thread of the adapter here is going to be coming in contact with that little hole in the finial that I pointed out earlier. So we're going to pick up our spout again, being careful to hold the finial in place, and I think it's a good idea to use your thumb to hold the finial in the down position. And then we're going to take the diverter with the adapter on top of it and carefully place it up through the center of the spout. And as we push it up, you're going to feel it come in contact with the finial on the inside. We're going to start turning the entire diverter to start threading the top of the adapter into the finial. And you'll notice I'm turning it by the bottom here. There's like a little hexagon on the very bottom. That's ensuring that I'm threading the adapter into the finial itself. Once I have it hand tight, I think it's a good idea to use a little wrench to ensure I've tightened it as far as it will go, because that will make sure that the finial matches up perfectly with the trim once it's finally installed. I'll feel it kind of bottom out, which means that I have both sides of that adapter fully threaded into the top of the diverter and then into the top of the finial here. Now, at this point, we're about ready to drop it into our mounting deck. But before I do that, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and test the functionality to make sure everything looks like it's working correctly. If it is, I'm going to hold the spout body here and then test the finial by moving it up and down. And you'll see that little plunger on the bottom of the diverter moving up and down as well. So everything's looking great. Now at this point, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and preload that set screw into the back of my spout here. So I'm going to use my set screw and my 1/8 inch hex key. Being careful to make sure I'm not cross-threading this, it should thread fairly easily. And give it just 1 or 2 turns to hold the set screw in place as we drop this down onto our spout body. And then finally, I'm going to use the rubber gasket, carefully placing it over the end of the diverter and making sure it seats fully on the underside of my spout here. With everything looking good, I can take it, lift it up over my spout body and carefully reinsert the diverter down inside. Give it a little bit of gentle pressure until my spout is sitting fully along my mounting deck here. Now for my install here, I'm using a smooth mounting deck surface. However, if your mounting deck surface at home was something like tile or a natural stone that may be just a little bit uneven, I definitely recommend adding a thin bead of silicone sealant around the bottom of the spout here to ensure a watertight seal. All right, now at this point, I'm going to check final alignment, making sure that my spout is perfectly aligned where I want it, and then I can lock it into place using my hex key. Go ahead and tighten that down enough to make sure my spout isn't going to wiggle around. And once I'm happy with how everything's looking, the final step is going to be taking this little black button cover here, which will set right over that set screw to give the faucet a nice, clean, finished look. All right, that wraps up the installation of the spout. So at this point, we can move on to installing our hand shower.
All right, now it's time to work on our hand shower. So the first thing we're gonna do is pull up on our leader hose and remove this test cap. Now it's important you pull this up because there is a chance that it could fall back down once we take this test cap off. So to take this off, we just unscrew it. And you can discard this. Now inside of this leader hose, there's already a gasket here. You wanna remove that one and replace it with a fresh one. There is one included in your packaging. So I'm gonna use a hex key to help me get this out. Just pull it out like that. You can discard it and then make sure you use the fresh gasket. So I'm gonna seat it down, making sure that it's firmly in place. Okay, it should look like that. The next step is to take your 3/32 inch hex key and your set screw, and I'm gonna preload my hex key with the set screw and then grab my base. I'm gonna screw this set screw into the base, making sure that I don't go past the threads here. Now I'm gonna take my silicone sealant here and I'm gonna apply sealant all along this channel on the bottom of my base. Once we've got our sealant on, we're gonna slide it over our leader hose, making sure that this longer end faces away from the interior of the tub. We're just gonna press it down. You'll feel it kind of seat, there we go. We'll take our hex key again. We'll tighten down our set screw. All right, I've cleaned up any excess silicone. Now it's time to put our screw cover on. So this is included in your packaging. You'll see it has this small cutout here. You wanna make sure that faces down. So it just goes right in the back of the base here to cover that set screw. All right, once you've got that fully seated, we're gonna grab the conical nut here and your finished hose. And you'll notice there's two different ends on this finished hose here. So we're gonna take the threaded side, and you'll notice the conical nut also has two different ends. So we want this gold threaded side to face down. We're gonna slide it over the threaded side of our finished hose. And we're gonna take that same end. We're just gonna hand tighten this into our leader hose. Then you're gonna grab two adjustable wrenches, and you'll notice there's these flat sides here on your finished hose. So we're gonna place our one wrench right over those. Tighten it down. We're gonna place our other wrench on our leader hose. And then just snug it up. Once you've got that tightened down, we're gonna stop here. We're not going to install the hand shower because we're gonna flush this line at a later step. Now we're gonna move on to doing the valve body.
Moving right along, we next can install the trim over our valve body. Now, if you haven't done so already, you can go ahead and remove that black plastic cap off the top of the valve body itself and discard it. Next, we're gonna be using this trim sleeve over the valve body, but I wanna talk about it for just a second. First, you'll notice there's a kind of a top and a bottom to it, with the bottom having this larger flare out here. And if you turn it over, you'll see it has a couple flat spots and then also this little tab. Now, this tab is gonna correspond with the notch at the base of the valve body. So as I slip this over the valve body itself, I wanna make sure that tab fits right into that notch. If I've done that correctly, you'll notice that the trim sleeve is coming in full contact with my mounting deck here. Once that looks good, I'm gonna take my bonnet cap, again, making sure the tapered side is facing up with the flat spot down. And I'm gonna gently thread it over the top of my valve body, making sure it's not cross-threaded at all, and then hand tighten that into place. With that hand tightened, it should have the sleeve securely held over my valve body. Now at this point, our next step is gonna be flushing our lines, which means running some water into the bathtub itself. So I'm gonna take a quick second to clear everything out of the bathtub, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next step. Next, we can move on to flushing our lines. Basically what this is gonna do is run some water through our faucet here, making sure we're clearing any debris and also allow us to check for some leaks. So first thing I wanna do is make sure that my valve is in the off position, meaning the stem is pulled directly towards the bathtub and sticking straight up. Then I'm gonna turn on the supplies back to the bathtub and then push my stem away to open the valve and start letting some water flow through my system. Now I also wanna make sure that my hand shower hose is pulled out far enough that I can see this connection that I made in a previous step. With my free hand, I'm gonna hold the hose to make sure the water's going back inside the tub and then pull up on the finial on the back side of my spout to direct water through the hose. Now I'm gonna let this run for about 30 seconds to make sure that I've cleared any debris, and also keep an eye on this connection to see if I see any evidence of a leak that needs to be corrected. All right, everything's looking great, so I can go ahead and shut off the flow of water now. All right, everything looks great, and I don't see any evidence of a leak, so at this point, I think I can do some light water cleanup and then move on to the next step of attaching the hand shower to the end of the hand shower hose. To attach our hand shower, I'm gonna start by taking the end of my hand shower hose here and this conical nut at the end, and use this gasket, pushing it all the way inside of the nut to the bottom of those threads there, making sure it's sitting flat against the bottom of the hand shower hose. With that in place, I can take my hand shower and gently thread it onto the end of the hose. And I'm not using any tools here or anything, I'm just gonna use my hands, and that's plenty to make sure it's nice and snug connected to the hose. Now at this point, I'm gonna feed my hose back down inside of my sprayer support here. Making sure that everything looks great. And I think it's a good idea at this point just to double check the function of the hose by pulling it out a couple times to make sure it feels like nothing's getting caught or snagged and that it's operating correctly. Okay? Everything's feeling and looking great, so at this point we can move on to installing the handle on top of our valve body.
Our final step is installing the handle. So we're gonna take the handle base here and set it over the stem extender. Take the included 1/8" hex key and the set screw here and preload it. Then it just fits right inside here. We're gonna tighten that down. All right, tighten that till it's snug. Then take your handle here and it just screws on, it's got threads. Okay, now we're gonna test it to make sure it's not loose. If yours at home is loose, you'll just need to tighten that set screw. All right, that wraps up our install. It looks great.
And remember, if you have any additional questions, you can always reach out to the Delta Faucet customer service team. They're more than happy to help.